After 12 years building my father's company to $75 million, he gave it to my brother. Did they really think I'd just accept that? After 12 years of operating my father's company, I finally increased its value to $75 million. At a family supper, my father glanced at me and smiled. "Your brother will take over now." My heart dropped, but I smiled back. The following morning at work, everything changed. I vividly remember my father's smile that night, his hand resting proudly on my brother's shoulder, as if he had already made up his mind before saying the words that would change everything. "Your brother will take over now." I felt my stomach plummet, but years of skill kept my expression calm. I smiled back, like if his words hadn't pierced right through me, unraveling 12 years of my life's work in an instant. The dining room was alive with the clinking of glasses and the gentle hum of talks among extended relatives and close business associates. This was more than just a family dinner, it was a celebration. A minute to honor everything we had built. Everything I'd built. My father founded Harper & Company when I was a child, a small logistics company that struggled to stay alive during its early years. I grew up watching my father fight to keep things going, working late hours, forgoing family holidays, and always pursuing the next contract to make ends meet. When I was 24, fresh out of business school, he eventually let me in. Though I had to fight for the opportunity. And I had done more than simply step in. Harper & Company had grown from a struggling regional logistics concern to a nationwide powerhouse under my leadership, with operations expanded, million-dollar contracts secured, and cutting-edge technology integrated. What was once a small, virtually bankrupt company has grown into an industry leader valued at $75 million. But, at this moment, none of it mattered. My father had already made the decision. My brother Ethan would take over. Not me? A gentle wave of approval rippled over the table, with murmurs of congratulations directed toward Ethan. I watched as he lowered his gaze, pretending modesty. Though I knew better. Ethan had never completely invested in the firm. He'd spent the last decade jumping from one failed business to the next, never quite finding his feet. He was not interested in logistics. He was not interested in operations. However, he was interested in power. I'd spent 12 years proving myself, starting Harper & Company from the bottom up, making every difficult decision, late-night strategy call, and contract negotiation. Ethan hadn't done any of it. And yet here we were. Nonetheless, I swallowed my emotions. I'd learned a long time ago that exhibiting pain was considered a weakness in this household. I reached for my wine glass and steadied my hand before lifting it. "Lisa? Smile. Smile." To Ethan, I replied, my voice smooth and controlled. The visitors raised their glasses, unaware of the tempest developing behind my eyes. My mother looked at me from across the table, an unreadable expression on her face. But I knew she understood. Unlike my father, Mom had always recognized the effort I put in. But she refused to interfere. She never did. Then there was my father, smiling with the same unflinching assurance, fully oblivious that his decision had put something in motion. Ethan met my eyes from across the table, a smirk barely visible on the corner of his lips. That was the moment I knew. This was not solely my father's decision. Ethan had waited for this. He had carefully positioned himself, portraying the loyal son who had finally discovered his purpose. My father, a staunch conservative, saw no problem in his rationale. The kingdom should be passed down from father to son. A daughter's efforts were always viewed as temporary, a footnote in history, no matter how hard she worked to show different. But what they didn't realize, and none of them had considered, was that I had spent the previous 12 years not only developing a company, but also consolidating my position inside it. And the next morning, they'd figure out what that meant. That night, I hardly slept. My thoughts replayed every sacrifice I'd made for Harper & Company, late nights, missed birthdays, and relationships strained under the weight of my desire. I had given everything to this company. And now they expect me to just step aside? They'd underestimated me. By 3 a.m., I was in my home office, typing furiously on my keyboard. Each contract, every share, all executive agreements. Nobody knew how this company worked better than I did. Ethan expected a smooth transition, that by next week, his name would be on the office door, and his employment would be guaranteed. What he didn't realize was that while my father was busy making public appearances and my brother was busy pretending to understand the business, I had secured something much more valuable. Control. I entered Harper & Company headquarters at exactly 8:45 a.m., as I had done for the previous 12 years. The same walls. The same polished floors. The same hum of efficiency persisted as staff settled into their routines. But today was different. Today, I didn't walk into my office, I was walking into a battleground. The reception area was unusually quiet, the type of silence that comes before a storm. They knew. The whispers had already begun. The story of my father's declaration during dinner had circulated quickly. Employees looked at me with uncomfortable looks, avoiding direct eye contact, unsure where their loyalty should rest. I did not acknowledge them. I strolled confidently, my heels tapping on the marble flooring, my stance solid. Never show them you are disturbed. I entered my office. Shutting the door behind me, I had exactly 15 minutes until my father and Ethan arrived, expecting them to take over as CEO and heir apparent respectively. 15 minutes before their entire strategy disintegrated in front of them. I sat at my desk, inhaled deeply, and then turned on my computer. The screen displayed a list of sensitive documents and contracts that they had never considered looking at and assumed did not matter. I opened my ownership records, lingering my hands over the keyboard for a moment before clicking on the file labeled Executive Shareholder Agreement. And then I waited. A strong knock on my door came at precisely 9 a.m. I did not bother answering. The door opened, and my father and Ethan strolled in, both exuding confidence. His, inborn. Ethan's, carefully crafted. My father walked in like a monarch surveying his realm, and Ethan, dressed in an expensive navy suit, flashed me a smug, triumphant grin. It took everything I had not to laugh. My father said, "Lisa," in his customary forceful tone, as if acknowledging me was a favor. "I assume you're aware of the transition happening today?" Transition. Interesting wording. "I'm aware," I replied easily, reclining back in my chair. I looked at Ethan, whose smirk became wider. "Good," my father said, nodding as if we all agreed. "Ethan will be stepping in as the new CEO. We'll need you to help with the handover, get him familiar with the operations before you officially move on." I raised an eyebrow. "Move on?" I repeated, faking ignorance. "Dad, I think you're mistaken about something." His face twitched with annoyance. He was used to my silent cooperation and ability to follow instructions. He was unprepared for this. "Lisa," he murmured, his voice tight, like if addressing a child. "This isn't up for debate, we've already made the decision." I smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Oh, I know, Dad," I answered softly. "The thing is, you don't have the authority to make that decision." Ethan scoffs quietly and shakes his head. "Lisa, don't make this difficult, we're trying to do this the easy way." I did not respond. Instead, I went for my remote and clicked a button. The enormous screen on my office wall displayed a document that I had been examining earlier. Executive Shareholders Agreement signed on August 17, 2015. Signatories, Lisa Harper, James Harper, father, and Ethan Harper. My father's face paled somewhat. I turned to Ethan. "Do you even know what this document is?" He crossed his arms and shifted in discomfort. "A shareholders agreement?" he wondered. I nodded. "Yes. And do you know what it says?" I tapped the screen to highlight an important clause. This document was drafted when Harper & Company was restructuring. It clearly states that any transfer of executive power, such as appointing a new CEO, requires the approval of all majority shareholders. I caught my father's gaze. "And I, Dad, hold 60% of the company's shares." The hush that followed was smothering. My father's expression darkened. "That's impossible," Ethan whispered as he moved forward to examine the page. "Actually, it's very possible," I replied calmly. "You see, over the years, while you were busy failing at every startup you touched, and Dad was busy playing the role of business patriarch, I was doing something else." I leaned forwards. I was securing my place. I turned back to face my father. "Remember when you needed capital for expansion in 2017? You agreed to give me an additional 15% of your shares in exchange for my investment. And in 2019, when we had that court dispute, another 10% was transferred under my name as collateral, which you never bothered to reclaim. That, plus my original 35%, gives me the controlling stake." My dad's jaw clenched. "But Ethan..." Ethan was in a panic. "You have to be bluffing," he exclaimed. I took out a second document. "This is the most recent legal filing with the state. Want to verify?" Ethan took the paper and scanned it, his face losing color with every passing second. "You can't do it," he muttered. "Dad, tell her she can't do this." My father stayed silent. Because he knew. I had lawfully outmaneuvered him. And he couldn't do anything about it. I sighed softly and stood up. "I'm not firing you, Ethan," I explained. "I don't want to force you into the real job market, but you will report to me and work under my guidance. Otherwise..." I motioned to the door. "You're free to leave." Ethan looked at my father, his eyes begging, but for the first time in his life, my father had no response. There was no way to fix it, because it wasn't his company anymore. That was my. The silence in my workplace felt oppressive. Ethan still held the official document in his hand, his fingers white from holding it too firmly. My father remained motionless beside him, his expression unreadable. But I knew better. He was calculating, trying to figure a way out of this. There was not one. I had spent years preparing for this moment, not because I expected treachery, but because experience had taught me never to presume loyalty in situations of authority. For the first time in my life, my father didn't recognize me. Maybe he never had. "Is that it?" Ethan eventually spoke, his voice tinged with resentment. "Are you just taking everything?" I laughed softly, without humor. "Are you taking everything?" I repeated, moving closer to him. "Ethan, I created this company from nothing. I made every contract, expansion, and innovation a reality. While you were busy failing above, I was keeping this company running. So no, I am not taking anything." I leaned in slightly. "I'm just keeping what's already mine." Ethan's face contorted in rage, but he had no response. He knew I was correct. And worse, so did my father. He had spent years believing that bloodline was more important than skill. That his son would receive what was properly mine. He'd underestimated me. And now he had to pay for his folly. My father eventually ended the hush. "You're making a mistake, Lisa." His voice was calm and calculated, but I could sense the pressure underlying. "Families should stick together. Do you truly want to end this relationship?" I met his eyes unflinchingly. "Dad," I said, "you burned this bridge the moment you made your decision without me." His lips form a thin line. "Business is larger than one person, we can develop a solution that benefits everyone." I cocked my head slightly, simulating interest. "Oh, I agree." I let the words hang in the air before proceeding. "That's why I'm offering you both a choice." I went to Ethan first. "You can stay with the company," I added, keeping my voice smooth and professional. "But you will not be CEO. You will serve as an advisor with limited authority. Your compensation will be generous, but you will report to me." Ethan stiffened, but I did not stop. "Or," I added, "you can walk away. I will acquire your shares at market value. You can take the money and start working on a new project." My dad scoffed. "You're acting like you hold all the cards." I smiled. "I do." My words were followed by a dense hush. I let them sit in it, let them experience what it was like to be powerless. Finally, my father breathed, shaking his head in astonishment. "I never thought you'd do this," he grumbled. "Not to your own family." At his comments, I felt a searing pang. "Not for your own family." I wanted to tell him he was the one who did it. That he chose to cast me aside, as if I were only temporary. But I did not. In the end, it didn't matter. What was important was that I would not let them remove what I had built. Not now. Not ever. Ethan was the first to storm out. Good riddance. I knew my brother well enough to anticipate his next action. He would approach our relatives and family acquaintances, presenting himself as a victim of corporate deception. I didn't care. I was not here to win their approval. I came here to win my future. My father waited for a while longer, as if expecting me to alter my mind. When I didn't respond, he nodded slowly. "You've changed," he stated gently. I met his gaze. "No, Dad. I just finally stopped pretending." Then he departed. I breathed and returned to my chair. I should have felt victorious. I had fought for my position, and won. But as I glanced at the vacant doorway, I sensed something else. A soft, lingering aching. A part of me had always wished for my father's approval. Some small, desperate part of me believed that if I worked hard enough and proved myself repeatedly, he would eventually see me. But he never truly looked. So now he had no choice but to see me for who I truly was. Not his daughter, not his temporary replacement. The genuine boss of Harper & Company. I returned to my computer, my attention changing. I had spent 12 years creating this business. Now I'd spend the next 12 years making it untouchable. My father and brother attempted to take everything from me. But in the end, they were the ones who had lost everything. For the first time in 12 years, my workplace felt empty. There were no phone calls from my father. Ethan sent no passive-aggressive emails, just silence. But silence did not indicate serenity. It meant the struggle had started. I knew my father wouldn't leave peacefully. And Ethan? He would fight tooth and nail to restore what he believed was his birthright. I wasn't naive enough to believe this was over. It had just begun. By the next morning, I could detect an undercurrent of discomfort in the company. Employees who had greeted me with confidence last week now appeared nervous, as if they were terrified to choose a side. Several department heads avoided eye contact. I knew exactly what was going on. My father and Ethan were using the Whisper network. Old family pals, board members, senior executives. They were spreading doubts, painting myself as frigid, ruthless, disloyal. Ethan, in particular, had taken on the character of the wounded son, betrayed by his sister. I could see him now, seated in a high-end restaurant, pretending to be sorry as he told our investors how I had taken the firm from him. And what about my father? He would not need to say much at all. Just a deep sigh. A shaky head. The neatly arranged words. I only ever wanted the best for my children. It was calculated. And risky. Because, if they could turn my board members and senior executives against me, they may force me out of my own company. At the very least, make my leadership impossible. I wasn't going to let that happen. That afternoon, I scheduled an emergency executive meeting. As I entered the boardroom, I could feel the tension in the air. Half of the room averted my gaze. The other half observed me too closely, waiting for me to slip. I took a seat at the head of the table. My seat. Let's not waste time, I added, my tone steady. I know there have been conversations, behind closed doors, over drinks, in hushed voices. I let my gaze sweep the room, pausing on each individual just long enough to cause them to squirm uncomfortably. I'm also aware that some of you are asking if my leadership is sustainable. Several folks tensed. Nobody spoke. I tapped my fingers on the polished wooden table. Let's clear that up now. I displayed a presentation on the screen behind me. Numbers, data, facts. I transformed this company from a struggling regional business to a $75 million industry leader. Under my leadership, we've increased sales by 300% over the last 5 years and entered 6 new markets. I turned to the CFO. Paul, do we have a single financial indicator suggesting this company is in trouble under my leadership? Paul hesitated before shaking his head. In fact, projections show another 20% growth in the next quarter. I nodded. So let's be honest about what's happening here. I leaned forwards. My father and brother are not unhappy because the business is faltering. They are not upset because I am failing to lead. They are furious because they expected me to step aside and let Ethan take over. Regardless of qualification. Regardless of the outcome. The room was silent. Then I dropped the true bombshell. I also know that some of you have been contacted in the last 24 hours, offered incentives to push for my resignation. I tilted my head slightly. If anyone here would like to disclose those conversations now, this is your chance. Several folks shuffled uncomfortably. Then, after a lengthy period, one of the senior executives cleared his throat. I received a call, he said. From your father. He said he was considering making an official appeal to the board. I nodded, not surprised. And did he offer anything in return for your support? A pause. Then, a slow nod. There it is. I breathed and stood up. My father built this company, I replied. I will not dispute that. But I went further than he could have. And I will not let him manage it from the outside. I let my voice drop slightly, controlled and threatening. If he wants a fight, he'll get one. I gathered my papers and looked each executive in the eyes. If anyone here believes my father and brother deserve control, now is the time to make your move. Silence. Nobody moved. Good. I turned and went away, head held high. It wasn't just about keeping my company. This was to ensure that they never imagined they could take it from me again. That night, I made my own call. Not to any board member, not for an investor. But what about the media? By morning, the business section of every major news outlet featured the following headline. Power shift at Harper & Co., Lisa Harper outmaneuvers family in boardroom battle. I'd made my move. Now it was their turn. And I waited. My inbox burst the morning after my story went to publication. Emails. I missed calls. Messages from reporters, investors, and board members. Some were supportive. Some were cautious. However, most of them had one question in common. Is it true? I let them wait. I knew what game my father was playing. He had spent decades mastering the art of public perception. He understood that reputation was important in business. If he couldn't beat me in the boardroom, he would undercut me in public. And that was exactly what he was attempting to do. By lunchtime, The first counterattack had arrived. A press release is nicely made, precisely phrased, but full of lies. Harper & Company has always been a family-owned business. We are disappointed by recent occurrences, but we remain dedicated to sustaining the ideals that have driven this organization. Changes in leadership are unavoidable, and we expect to transition seamlessly as we move forward. It was subtle. But I knew what it was actually saying. Lisa is irresponsible. Lisa is unstable. Lisa isn't a team player. I was not surprised. I was, however, incensed. I sat in my office, watching the news as industry analysts argued over my leadership. Was Lisa Harper too aggressive in her takeover? Will her lack of cooperation hurt the company in the long run? Can she recover from this PR disaster? They spoke as if I wasn't watching. As if I hadn't already planned my next move. Because if my father and Ethan desired a public conflict, I was planning to give them one. I did not release a statement. I did not call a press conference. Instead, I placed one phone call. To an old buddy in investigative journalism. I have something for you, I explained. But you'll need to move fast. An hour later, I emailed over documents. Emails. Financial reporting. Internal records. Evidence. Harper & Company, under my father's guidance, had engaged in unethical business activities throughout time. I had spent the previous decade quietly cleaning up. The news broke within 24 hours. Behind the scenes at Harper & Company, a legacy of hidden debts and financial cover-ups. The piece was brutal. It applauded my leadership for improving the company's financial situation. It was critical of my father's mismanagement, but most importantly, it proved that I was the sole reason Harper & Company had survived. Just like that. The narrative changed. The board has stopped doubting me. The investors stopped hesitating. And what about my father? He had nowhere to hide. 2 days later, my father finally contacted me. I let the phone ring 3 times before answering. Lisa, he murmured in a tense voice. We need to talk. I slumped back in my chair. Do we? Silence. Finally, a sigh. You didn't have to do that. I gave a tiny laugh. Neither did you? This company was supposed to be a legacy, he told me. For the family. For both of you. I had a familiar pain. A small, naive part of me had once desired that, but not anymore. Dad, I spoke gently. If you wanted me to safeguard the legacy, you should have trusted me with it. Instead, you attempted to steal it from me. Another prolonged stillness. He asked, almost reluctantly. What happens now? I breathed slowly. Now, I'm going to make sure you never touch my company again. The conflict was over. My father had lost. Ethan had vanished. And I'd won. However, when I sat in my office, staring out at the metropolitan skyline, I felt no happiness, no victory, just emptiness. I had spent the last 12 years fighting for Harper & Company, building it, safeguarding it, and making it stronger than ever. Nonetheless, the cost of that win outweighed my expectations. Because I had secured my position, I had misplaced something else along the road. My family. The next day, I came into the office as if nothing had happened. But everybody knew the truth. The whispers had ended. The doubt had dissipated. I was no longer simply Lisa Harper, CEO. I was Lisa Harper, the lady who outmaneuvered her father and brother and emerged victorious. Some people appreciated me for it. Some scared me because of it. And some were still waiting for me to fall. I let them wait. At midday, my father and I convened in the conference room for our final conversation. He seemed exhausted. Older, as if the weight of what had happened had finally fallen on his shoulders. I waited for him to speak first. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. I'm retiring, he announced simply. Effective immediately. I did not react. I had anticipated this. I'll sell my remaining shares, he added. I'll keep a small percentage as an investor, but I won't be involved anymore. I examined him attentively. And Ethan? His jaw stiffened. He's gone, my father admits. Took the buyout, he won't be back. A part of me knew it would end like this. Ethan had never been strong enough to face his own difficulties. When he realized he had lost, he did what he always did. Run. Still, hearing it out made something inside me ache. No regret. Not guilty. Simply the finality of it all. I nodded. Understood. My father exhaled and rubbed his temples, as if he had a headache. Then, after a long gap, he said something unexpected. I underestimated you. It was not an apology, but it was as close as I'd ever come. And strangely, I realized I didn't need it anymore. A month later, Harper & Company looked nothing like it did previously. Who were the previous board members who supported my father and Ethan? Gone. What about the executives who had questioned my leadership? Replaced? The company had always performed well under my leadership. But now, it was absolutely mine. And with that control comes a new perspective. I introduced proposals that my father had consistently rejected. He has described modernized systems as unnecessary. He ventured into industries that he had previously avoided. Within 6 months, profits skyrocketed. Within a year, we had reached the $100 million milestone. For the first time in my life, I wasn't battling solely to prove myself. I was fighting to create something that no one could take from me again. A year later, I met my father for dinner. It was the first time we had talked since his retirement. He looked different. Quieter. He wasn't angry now. Simply accepting. I read about the latest deal you closed, he continued as he drank. It was a smart move. I smirked faintly. I know. A shadow of a smile appeared on his lips. There was no longer tension between us. There is no war left to fight. Just the simple, undeniable truth. He'd tried to push me aside. And I had proven him incorrect. He lifted his glass. To Harper & Company, he stated. This time, as I clinked my glass with his, I did not feel angry. I didn't feel resentful. Only tranquility. Because I'd already won. And I no longer needed his permission to know it. As I sit in my office now, overlooking the city where I built my empire, I reflect on the lessons this trip has taught me. That family might be your greatest adversary. Loyalty is a currency, not a promise. That power is never given. It's taken. But more importantly, sometimes, the finest method to prove your worth is to quit seeking validation. And create something so powerful that they can never ignore you again. I don't have any regrets. Harper & Company are now mine. And I aim to make sure that no one forgets it. My husband and I are on the brink of divorce, and we are desperately seeking advice. Can our marriage be saved? Throwaway account due to friends' family following the main account, omitting some personal information for sake of anonymity. I'm going to try and make a timeline of events in our relationship for context. TLDR at bottom. Met when we were 9, started dating at 12, mind you this was that middle school type of dating. He cheated on me when we were 15 or 16, at this point we were on again, off again, which continued until we were 17. I got a full ride to a university across the country for athletics and academics when I was 18. My first and only semester there, I hated. I hated the team and the coaches and I had no friends. He flew out to visit me and we got engaged at 18 years old. He flew back a little over a month later and we had a courthouse wedding. I came home after the semester finished. He was 18 and I was 19 when he joined a very difficult prestigious branch of the military. He left for 3 months for training, which was difficult but we did fine. He came back for a few weeks and then left for a few more months for school for his particular job. During this time, I would later find out, he signed himself up on Bumble, and paid $50+ in upgrades for more swipes. He insists he never met anyone from it and no conversations that he had were ever anything more than introductions. He also, again, I would later find out a few years later, spent over $600 at a strip club. He says he was pressured by seniors to go and ended up paying for a VIP room, for one of his buddies because he got the room and then didn't have the money to pay for it and my husband said his friend was going to get into trouble. That weekend, he would go up and down the coast going to various clubs and another strip club from what I've gathered. At 19, we moved states and got our first house together. At 20, he deployed. This would be a very difficult time in our lives, and even more difficult after he got home. He developed a pornography addiction while deployed. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor at 4 a.m. refreshing one of his social media accounts, which I could see his following numbers go up about every 5 minutes. All porn accounts. He pressured me for pictures and videos and I would feel guilty for not doing the things he wanted and I felt like if I didn't he was just going to find someone else to do it for him. He came home 6 months later and we were okay, except I noticed after a few weeks that as soon as he came home from work he would practically beeline it to the bathroom and shower for 45+ minutes. Sometimes I would even go into the bathroom after and I could tell he dropped the bottle of lube on the ground and it was still slippery. Or I could see the ring on the counter from the bottom of the bottle. I did my best to ignore it, until one day I saw a charge on our account for $30 to someone with a very interesting name. I confronted him and he immediately looked away, took a deep breath, brushed his hand through his hair and sputtered out a quick excuse that it was his buddy's wife who bought them all lunch during work. I don't know why but I said okay and left it at that. He got up a few minutes later saying he felt sick and went to lay down. I got a text from him an hour later saying he was sorry and that he developed a pornography addiction over deployment and he sent money to a girl for her premium Snapchat or something. He says he felt so guilty he didn't even look at anything and he deleted her right after he sent the money. I realized that the day this transaction took place, he had bought me flowers. He has never done that before, not even on any special occasions. From here on the dates get confusing for me. I don't remember what happened first or when or how far apart, but I'll do my best to include as much information as I remember. Sometime later, maybe weeks, maybe months, I woke up to a message from an old acquaintance on a certain social media site. I think we were still 20 or maybe 21. I don't remember what exactly she said, something along the lines of, "I just wanted you to know Hex said this to me." Or something like that. He had messaged her the night prior, whilst drinking at a friend's house down the road, that he loved and missed her. I wish so badly I could remember more, but for some reason I can't. I know she said something like, "You can't be saying that you're married." And he said something along the lines of, "I don't care." I screamed at him to wake up, but he was still drunk. I told him I wanted a divorce. I locked myself in the bathroom and hurt myself because I wanted to feel anything other than how I felt at that moment. I don't know how much time passed. When he opened the door, he said he didn't send those messages. He said that he left his phone plugged into the speaker and his friend was using it to play music. He said his friend must have seen the girl's story and messaged her trying to get nudes. He even pulled out his phone with proof, a text conversation between him and his friend confirming that the friend had messaged her and said he was sorry. I don't know why, but I believed him immediately. I remember having the most euphoric feeling of, I don't know what the word is, but whatever you feel when you let out a breath you've been holding and say, "Oh, thank God." I'm getting frustrated writing this because I'm realizing how much I'm forgetting and I feel like I'm missing something. At 21 I think, shit hit the fan. I think at this point I had gone through his phone several times and found internet history and links that he had clicked through one of his social media accounts to hundreds of different OnlyFans sites. One night I went through his entire dollar account history since 2018 and found the charge for the strip club and Bumble. He said the Bumble charge wasn't him, it was a senior who used his card because he had gotten frozen or something ridiculous like that. I of course believed him. I don't know why. I can't remember at what point I found out that he lied about messaging the girl on social media. I think it was after I had looked through his phone again and I found text messages between him and his friend that was the one who allegedly sent the messages. His friend said something like, "Bro, I can't even go to parties that your wife is at because she hates me lol," or something like that. But they both confirmed what I didn't want to believe. My husband had taken my phone, deleted the messages sent to me by the girl, and got his friend in on this elaborate story. I can't remember when I found out that he did in fact download and pay for upgrades on Bumble. I think I just knew at this point he was lying, and grilled him long enough that he relented. He said he never met anyone or anything, and he said during the conversation, "I only paid for the upgrade because no one would ever swipe for me." Or something like that. I can't remember at what point we went to legal on base and got information to file for divorce. I'd never seen him cry before besides one other time. After we got married, at the airport, he cried so hard and he wouldn't let me see. Just hugged me and buried my face in his chest so I wouldn't see. He said he didn't want to leave. But he cried constantly after I told him this was it and that I had an appointment and paperwork filled out to file for divorce. I'd never seen him like this before. Constantly saying he was sorry, deleting every social media account he'd ever owned. Crying at the drop of a pin. Saying things like he will never marry again, I could have everything in our savings, he'd pay for me to finish college if that's what I wanted. I relented and we went to marriage counseling. He stepped up a lot. He was never on his phone anymore. Would keep his phone unlocked and face up on the table. Told me I could go through it any time I asked. Promised to stop watching porn. He even started cleaning the house and making dinner before I got home from work. He stopped drinking with his friends. It was a complete 180. For a while. The issues started to arise when every little thing would trigger a panic attack. He couldn't hang out with his friends without me freaking out. He began drinking with his friends again maybe a few weeks later. One night he wasn't home by the time he told me he would be and I just broke. I ended up in the hospital and it was just the start of this toxic cycle. He would do something that would trigger me. Whether it be drinking with his friends or the occasional YouTube short I would see in his watch history of a half-naked woman with her tits out and bouncing up and down. I would scream at him and berate him and degrade him because I wanted him to feel exactly how I felt. I think marriage counseling eventually helped a lot. After the hospital I finally got my own therapist. She was my best friend. I still text her to this day. I didn't have any friends where we lived. He worked with his friends every day and every weekend they would all party. I didn't have anyone. My friends and family were back home. I'm shy and have really bad social anxiety and have always had trouble making friends because I can't seem to ever open my mouth when there's more than 3 people in the room. Whenever he would leave to go anywhere, I felt so alone. I think at 22 our marriage really started improving again. We went on vacation together and were able to work through a lot of issues and we were able to communicate things we were feeling and it was amazing. We both felt so heard and we were able to find happy mediums on issues and relayed boundaries that each of us respected. I was 23 when I moved home a few months before his contract ended. He tied up his loose ends on the house and work and he moved back home with me. He tried working a night shift blue-collar job, making good money, even more than he made in the military. But he hated it. He hated everything about it. He missed his friends and his job. His friends were his family. This was the first time I'd ever seen him truly depressed. 5 months later he joined a different branch of the military. I didn't want him to. I wanted him to stay and have a normal life with me. I wanted to work normal jobs and have a family. He doesn't. He said he doesn't even want a family. I had started nursing school and my best friend whom I hardly ever got to see had a baby. I finally had a group of friends and family I was able to hang out with every week. He left and got stationed in a different state, but only about 600 miles away this time. Far, but drivable. He came home for a visit after only a week of being there. We were doing good at this point, texting and calling a lot. A little over a month ago he left to go across the country for a 6-week exercise in the desert. He didn't have his phone for most of it, but he was able to text me once over a week ago. He didn't text again after that, until I messaged him letting him know that a pet of mine had died. He replied immediately. I've realized that he has had his phone, but just hasn't been talking to me. Yesterday, he texted me in the morning letting me know that he was going to spend an upcoming holiday with an old military friend from his previous branch, and then the holiday after that he wanted to go see his extended family in a different state. We've talked a lot since then, not about anything good. I've asked why he's pushing me away and he said he's focusing on his goals. I said I felt like I was being put on the back burner until he was ready to acknowledge me and our marriage, and I tried to tell him he didn't have to be alone and that I would support him. He said, "You can't though. You say you can but you didn't support college or the CIA, so I kinda felt I should just do this alone and get rid of some of the negativity." And I realized he was right. He brought up college when we were about 21, maybe 22, and I actually scoffed at him because I didn't realize he was being serious. I didn't believe he could do something like that. He barely graduated high school. He went to 4 different high schools total, never getting above a 1.5 GPA. I tried doing his homework to keep him afloat but he didn't care. I even got him enrolled in the same online academy that I attended, due to public school not fitting around my athletic schedule, and I had to do every class and every assignment for him because he would never do them. He ended up graduating from what you would call an alternative high school. After telling me he wanted to go to college, he then told me he was going to join the CIA. This was just unfathomable to me. I didn't know what to do because he wanted my support, but I also didn't want to lie to him and tell him I believed in him. I guess I still don't. And I feel awful, and I can't imagine the feeling of your spouse not supporting you unconditionally. I don't know how to support him in something I just don't think he can do. And now we're here. Neither of us want a divorce. Both of us know our relationship hasn't been the best. We both don't know what to do. I would feel so lost and empty without him. I've known him for more than half of my life. Our personalities are formed around each other. We talk the same, we have the same mannerisms. We experienced growing up together and becoming adults together. I just want to add that these experiences I've listed were the worst times. We've had amazing experiences together. We have so much fucking fun together. He makes me laugh more than anyone else can. He knows everything about me and has been there for every important moment in my life. I'm absolutely terrified of the future. I'm scared to tell my family if we get a divorce. I don't want to be another statistic. I know we got married young. I know we are a military family. I know that most of these marriages ended in divorce, but I really fucking thought we were different. I don't want to start over. I'm almost 24 and I know that's still considered young, but I've known him for 14 years. I thought we would have started thinking about having a family together by now. He just wants to focus on his career and says he doesn't think he even wants a family. I don't know what to do anymore. If you're still here, thanks for reading. I apologize if I'm all over the place. I haven't ever shared all this with anyone. I'm embarrassed of my situation and feel at a loss at what to do anymore. I'm really nervous to read any replies because I think I know what they're all going to say. TLDR, married young, he's in the military, history of infidelity on his part, verbal abuse on my part and lack of support. Have had successful marriage counseling in the past, but we're at the point where we feel like we want different things, but both of us still love each other and don't want a divorce. Neither of us know what to do. Update 1. After over 1,000 people castigating me in the comment section, I wanted to sort of give an update and answer a few questions. First off, yes, I can in fact type like a motherfucker. I had every intention of creating this post with anonymity, which obviously went down the drain as soon as I started typing. I didn't think this would get more than a couple thousand views and a handful of comments. I typed out every ignominious detail because I needed to see for myself everything in one spot. Someone said I must be exhausting to be around if I tell my friends and family all this. Well, you'll be happy to know that no one knows. I have never told any of my friends and family even a percentage of what has happened. That's why I ended up writing an epic. I wanted someone to know everything and tell me what to do because my brain has become this convoluted, the rose-colored type of convoluted, mess of, I don't even know. I have made my husband out to be this strong, loving, endearing, charismatic provider, and I know why. I've spent my entire life wanting to be the fucking best at everything. My dad's favorite thing he used to say to me every day after practice was second place is just the first loser. And I fucking held on to that. I was the best. I was the best at school. I ranked #1 out of my high school class of over 700 people. I have hundreds of medals and trophies. I did take second place at nationals one year, even though that doesn't feel like an accomplishment to me. I know it should be. But after dropping out of college and leaving behind a full-ride athletic and academic scholarship, I wanted it to be worth something. I never told anyone I left because I hated it and couldn't deal with it. I told everyone I got married and he joined the Marine Corps and I wanted to support him. I didn't want anyone to realize that I couldn't hack it. I wanted it to be worth it. And if I had marriage problems or if I got divorced, it would have just been for nothing. I would have lost again. And I can't lose. I grew up hiding in my closet hearing my dad scream at the top of his lungs at my older siblings because they averaged C's and D's in school. I knew what losing would get you. And I would not lose. My mom cheated on my dad when I was a kid. I remember waking up one morning to them screaming on the front lawn, my mom trying to get into her car to go to work and my dad grabbed her arm and ripped her out of the car. They don't know that I saw that. They worked through it, if that's what you want to call it. I thought that was what you were supposed to do. I thought that marriage was supposed to be hard and you were supposed to put every ounce of yourself into fixing your ups and downs. Many have asked if I want to live the rest of my life like this. Of course I don't. Who the fuck would want that? Why did I stay even after the first time? Well, starving people will eat anything. I have actually read every single comment, even the hurtful ones. God damn, you guys are fucking assholes, and I needed it. I fucking needed over 1,000 people telling me I'm a blind idiot to realize that marriage isn't supposed to be like this. And that I deserve better. Because I fucking do. I do fucking deserve better. And for all those saying I'm not going to leave because I haven't yet. I will fucking prove you wrong. I'm not going back anymore. I'm not going to fucking settle. I had heard the phrase sunk cost fallacy, but I didn't know what it meant. I do now. Thank you to everyone. Even the ones who believe this post was a creative writing assignment. It gave me a laugh realizing that my life and my marriage has been so bad, that it's unbelievable. Last side note, yes, I did comment with my main account a few times. It doesn't even matter anymore. And feel free to shoot me a message and tell me I got this, because I'm going to fucking need it. I feel like I've been rug pulled near the edge of a cliff and I can't find my footing. I don't know where the ground is and when it will come. But I know wherever I land it will be better than where I am currently. Update 2. Hi everyone, it's been almost a year. I can't believe it's been almost an entire year. I don't think I've ever made an update like this before, so hopefully I do it right and it's not removed. I meant to update sooner, I really did. But I have been busy living my life to the fullest extent possible. I can honestly say I didn't even think it was possible to enjoy life this much. I have never experienced happiness like this. I'm honestly having a hard time putting it into words how amazing my life has become. I filed for divorce probably within 48 hours of making that post. Papers were signed a month later, divorce was finalized 2 months after that. It was completely uncontested, we shared no assets, no children, thank God. It was actually a lot easier than I expected it to be. Honestly, the hardest part was telling my family, especially my mom. Everyone loved him so much because I, unfortunately, made him out to be so perfect. It was pretty much a slap to the face for her to find out. I felt awful. She cried for days. But she was so supportive of me. Everyone was so damn supportive of me. I turn 25 soon. I decided to get my nurse practitioner's license. So that's the track I'm on right now. I've made an incredible amount of friends this year. If I'm not working, I'm out having fun. I'm always doing something fun every day. I'll try to reply to any comments, but I'm so busy these days. I have truly begun to find myself. And I'm fucking awesome. I am capable of so much. And I am brave. I am so brave. I did make one special friend from my original post, Bethany200300. Thanks to you and my best friend Katie, if you guys are reading this. Thank you for keeping me accountable and loving me unconditionally. I really didn't realize what a horrendous situation I was in. At least, not until after I made that initial post and received so many eye-opening comments. Lots of people were right though. I did already know the answer to my question. It's actually kind of weird thinking about it. It doesn't even feel real. Whenever I try to think about my life over the last couple of years, I can hardly remember anything. It's almost like I'm trying to recall a story that someone else told me. Anything that I do remember, I recall almost like I was a spectator, or an invisible third person in the room. And I just think this poor girl and what she's going through, I can't even imagine how awful. It just doesn't even feel like it was me. My real life started as soon as he was gone. We don't speak anymore. We haven't really spoken much since December. One of the last interactions we had, he was upset about the divorce and regretted it, and then he proceeded to threaten that he would murder anybody that I dated in the future. Yes, it's documented to the best of my ability. I don't think he would ever actually do anything like that. He hasn't even been back in the state this year. I think he's too busy. Last I heard through the grapevine, he got drunk, had a one-night stand and got some girl pregnant. She wants to keep the baby. He doesn't. I think she even took a brick to his car and smashed the shit out of it. If I could give him one last piece of advice, it would be to start a savings account for this poor kid's future therapy bills. And to ask him if he ever realized that almost all of his monumental life mistakes have been committed under the influence of alcohol. But alas, it isn't my problem. He will never hear from me again. And I can say that with complete happiness and confidence. To everyone who said I wouldn't do it and that I wasn't capable of leaving, fuck you and thank you. I did leave. I didn't walk, I ran. I fucking sprinted. And I didn't look back. Thank you, Reddit, for helping me save my life. To anyone who may be going through something similar. You can do it, I believe in you. If I can do it, you can too. The other side is brighter than you could ever imagine. Survivor of incest and closed adoption confronts biological daughter's persistent attempts at reconnection despite repeated rejections. I don't know if this is the right place, but I've exhausted other means of support. When I was 12, I suffered a short period of horrible abuse from a distant relative, and ended up pregnant. My religious parents were adamant about choosing life, while maintaining their crystal clear image in the community, and I was sent to live with my grandmother for my 7th grade year. I ended up giving birth a few weeks after my 13th birthday, and immediately handed the child over to her adoptive parents, who at the time seemed like wonderful people. The only people who even knew of my pregnancy in my life, aside from authorities and medical personnel, were my parents, my grandmother, one of my brothers, and my therapist. My husband is also aware. I'm now 32, I have been married to the man of my dreams for 2 years and pregnant with what will be our first children together. Lucked out with twins, as we require IVF to conceive. It took me the rest of my childhood and the better part of my 20s to get over what happened to me. I finally was able to heal, put it past me, and now for the past 5 years or so I'm able to go months at a time without thinking about it. I had a closed adoption. I made it clear to the adoptive parents I wanted absolutely no contact whatsoever, and I never held the baby I gave away, something I do not regret to this day. I have avoided ever having social media, partially to avoid being found. In the beginning of September, I received a phone call from a PI letting me know my biological daughter wanted to meet me and had hired him to track me down. I immediately made it clear I have no interest in contact, and to please leave me alone. By the end of November I had received multiple phone calls and letters from my biological daughter, begging me to meet her. I wrote her a letter in return, telling her I'm happy she's had a great life, but that I have no interest in contact. I made it clear, I will not stop her at all from reaching out to extended family. I won't be mad if she outs me as her biological mother, and pursues a relationship with my relatives. She did reach out to my brother, who immediately blocked her on Facebook. I would prefer she didn't, but I don't think it's my place to keep her from doing so. On Tuesday, she showed up at my front door while I was at work. My husband answered, and immediately told her to please leave, or he would have to call the police. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to explain to her in any other way, that I do not want to meet her. I also don't want to be cruel. I don't view her as my daughter, as horrible as that sounds. I do wish her the best, but I have built a life I'm finally comfortable with. I don't want her to be part of it. If there is any insight any adoptees could provide on how I could explain this to her without having to just be brutally honest and also sparing her feelings. Or birth moms, who have gone through a similar thing. Relevant comments. Comment 1, comment deleted by user OP. I ended up writing her another letter, explaining how she was conceived, how many years it took for me to finally feel like a human being again, and how my unwillingness to meet her has nothing to do with her personally, and everything to do with needing to preserve my own mental health. I asked that she please leave me and the one brother she reached out to alone. I again stressed, I would not stop her from reaching out to extended family, and I included a packet of information about our family medical history and some watercolor pictures that my grandmother and I made together when I was pregnant with her. Comment 2. Question: did her adoptive parents know about the circumstances of her conception? OP: her parents were made aware by my parents about details surrounding her conception before the adoption took place. Comment 3. While I don't condone her behavior, do try to understand what forces would drive someone to behave that way. What you and your husband are doing is, to put it very bluntly, a cruelty. It's understandable, but no less cruel. It makes sense that you don't view her as your daughter. But it also makes sense that she might seek to know who she is by knowing you. As an adopted kid growing up, I wondered endlessly about who I was, and I felt like the only way to get a sense of it was to track down biological relatives. Which I did do, and, funny enough, I experienced a little bit of what you described doing to her. It more or less worked out for me. She's a 19-year-old woman who just wants to know who she is. It actually may be healing for you also to erase the trauma of what you went through at 13, and giving up the child then, by replacing it with this new person, whom you may find you relate to as a peer, rather than your child. You may see her more as a younger sister, and that may actually be a great relationship for the two of you. The best situation I could see happening would be for you to welcome her interest, and accept her as a legitimate part of your life and family, for you and your husband to get over your resistance to the fact that she exists. I know my own birth mother's husband had to deal with this to a degree. Resisting her will actually just make things more unpleasant and have them linger, like the second shoe that never drops. While dropping the resistance may be the most peaceful path to her leaving on her own, or better yet, co-creating the kind of relationship that works for everyone involved. Obviously, as an adopted kid, I'm going to advocate for other adopted kids getting whatever they can to gain some closure about their own adoption experience. Adoption is, itself, traumatic. And it echoes throughout life. I think it would do both of you a world of good to hop on a phone together and for you to explain what your resistance is about. OP: nothing will erase the trauma I went through at 12 and 13 years old. In the span of a little over a year, I went from a little girl who still played with Barbies, to being forced to go through the extremely traumatic birth of an unwanted child. She is welcome to be a part of the lives and family of my extended family. Someday when my own children are grown, they are free to know and love her. For my own life, I choose not to have her as part of it. As painful as it is, she is a physical reminder of the worst events that have ever happened to myself and my brother. Telling me it may be healing for me or erase my abuse, to get to know her is, in a way, condescending. At no point did I attempt to make a claim that I know her trauma, nor will I ever trivialize it. I will never know the loss she feels, or the pain and unique trauma that comes along with being an adoptee. I won't claim to know what's best for her to heal, or any other person. I wish her nothing but the best, but I won't be hopping on the phone with her anytime soon. I won't pretend to know your trauma, don't pretend to know mine. I wish you and your family happiness and health. Adoption is challenging, and it seems often tragic for many parties involved. Comment 3. Threatening to have your daughter arrested because she wants to meet you seems a bit excessive. OP: a woman who is a stranger to my husband, showed up at our front door, demanding to see his wife, me, in the middle of a pandemic, while I am 26 weeks pregnant with our first children. She was shouting demanding to see me, and he calmly told her to leave or he would get the police involved. I don't think he acted out of line, or in excess. Comment 4. You didn't say that in your original post. All you wrote was, on Tuesday, she showed up at my front door while I was at work. My husband answered, and immediately told her to please leave or he would have to call the police. OP: at the time, it didn't seem necessary to say. She, a stranger, that I expressed I did not want any contact with, presumably drove across state lines to come to my home, while I am knowingly pregnant during a pandemic to see me. I am sympathetic to everything she's going through, but it was extremely unsettling for my husband, and I don't blame him at all. He's understandably protective of me. Comment 5. It's unsettling to see so many people refer to this 19-year-old girl as some malicious woman, including OP. She's a child and she is acting like one. OP. At no point did I make her out to be a malicious woman. She is definitely young, and I understand that that is part of where her lack of impulse control comes from. I have given her as much of an explanation as I'm willing to. I hope that she finds peace and closure in whatever it is she is looking for. Now that I have made her aware of the details surrounding her conception, I hope she can understand better why I make the choices I am making. I am someone who places a lot of value in having my space and boundaries respected. I don't feel I owe her anything. I was a child myself when she was born, and we are both victims of the same man who forced us into this situation. I do not view her as my daughter, and I do not view myself as her mother. I think we are two people biologically tied as parent and offspring, and tied by a series of extremely traumatic events that we had no choices in. I did not feel familial kinship for her while I was forced to keep an unwanted pregnancy, and I did not feel familial kinship for her when I was forced through a traumatic birth, and to be brutally honest, I do not feel familial kinship towards her now. I wish her well, and I hope she finds peace, but I do not feel in any way a parent to her. I don't know her trauma and will never know her trauma, in the same ways that she will never know mine. I don't think she has malicious intent. Comment 6. Yes, you did. But when confronted about that, several times, simply deny the misconstruction of the poor girl. OP. I have empathy for her. To a point. We all have the right to our boundaries being respected. Update. TLDR. When I was 13, I gave birth after being forced to go through a pregnancy that resulted from incest rape. The child was adopted through a closed adoption. After she initiated contact, sought a reunion, I declined wanting contact, and she has now shown up at my home twice. I reluctantly agreed to a phone call with said young woman today, and I know without a doubt that she is entirely unwelcome in my life. As stated in responses to comments in my original posts, I ended up writing my birth daughter another letter explaining to her the circumstances of her birth and why I do not want contact with her. I also included a few watercolors I did with my grandmother while I was pregnant with her, and an extensive packet of information regarding family medical history. I overnight FedExed it to the address I had for her. Sadly, in the late hours of last night, she showed up at my house again, this time while I was home, and pounded on my front door, screaming. My husband and I tried to ignore it, but we got a phone call from our neighbors that they would call the police if we didn't answer our door to handle the situation, and I honestly didn't want to start Christmas Eve with getting someone clearly going through the thick of it arrested. My husband spoke to her via our home doorbell, alarm system thing. When this did not placate her, I literally barricaded myself in our bathroom, and he went out the back door, locking it, and then around the front to speak to her. I could hear him screaming at her, unpleasant, but apparently effective, because she finally left. This morning, I received a phone call from her adoptive parents apologizing to me, that they never fully disclosed how she was conceived, and that they helped fund the PI, which is how she found me, hoping it would lead to a more happy reunion. What they did tell me, they told her, that she was the result of rape. What they lied to her about was that it was my parents who made me give her away, and that I always loved her, chose life and wanted to keep her if I'd been older. All lies, and it seems she received a similar very religious upbringing that I did. I ended up agreeing to speak with her on the phone, facilitated by her birth parents, if she understood that now she has to leave me alone, or I will pursue legal advice, and will not hesitate to call the police if she were to ever come to my home ever again. I was very blunt with her, because I felt that she's already been lied to 100 times. It probably would have been better to do the conversation through a therapist, but honestly I'm just happy it's over. She asked me if I loved her as her daughter, the way I love the children I'm pregnant with. I told I have love for her as a human being, but that I would not lie and say I felt like a mother to her. That she's only 5 years younger than my own husband, and that I don't love her in any maternal way, but I do love her as my sister in humanity. She asked me if I wish I had an abortion. I said that at the time, I wanted an abortion. That the trauma I felt would have been significantly reduced if I were allowed to terminate the pregnancy forced upon me by my rapist. I also said I wouldn't go back and change what happened now, because she already exists, and I would never wish away her existence. She asked me about my faith and if I am still a very conservative religious background, that I guess she shares. I told her no, that I am not even a Christian. She asked me about my political beliefs and if I support murdering babies. I said I am 100% pro-choice, that I am a socialist and an anti-capitalist, but that I don't think being conservative makes you a bad person. Not really related, but I felt the need to say it. We talked about other things for a bit, mostly her asking me, because if I'm being honest, I don't really care to ask her anything about herself. She asked me if I forgave her birth father, and if I ever spoke to him. and if I would ever consider visiting him with her. I told her that I will never forgive him. That I don't ascribe to Christian ideas of having to forgive. When pressed further about information related to him, I told her to ask my parents for any further information, and take the time to read the second letter I wrote her. I provided her mother with contact information for my own parents. I'm hoping to close this chapter of my life. I can't imagine speaking with me gave her much peace, but I hope she's satisfied. My husband and I are now considering moving so that she can't find us again. I don't feel any better having spoken with her. If anything, I'm reassured about choosing never to see her in person. She seems like a broken person, and I hope she finds her own healing, but I do not want her as part of my life. She seems like the kind of person I wouldn't get along with, and would never respect boundaries. I get that she has so much trauma of her own, and I hope she is able to leave the religious community she belongs to, unless she's happy there. I don't feel guilty that her life wasn't everything it could have been. I do feel sympathy that she obviously has been raised in a similar toxic religious household. I am glad this is over. I've disconnected my landline, and am changing my cell phone number. I am going to restart therapy at the beginning of next year, and if she ever shows up at my home again, I will be calling the police. Relevant comments. Comment 1. You did everything possible to help her while still keeping that boundary clear. I applaud you for that. I know this was very distributive to your life and she had no right to it and obviously crossed the line multiple times. It makes a lot more sense now hearing about the involvement of the adoptive parents and how they have hurt the situation. They should have never ever told her those things, never crossed a line with the PI, and never encouraged her to keep pursuing this. It was completely inappropriate and entirely their fault, honestly. The girl is just acting in the way you would expect for her age and upbringing in the context of what she had been told. I'm sure that as she gets older she will think back to this and possibly read through everything you gave her multiple times. She will be able to process it and most likely be able to understand where you're coming from. She will appreciate the information and the honesty at some point. She is just a child and everything that she had ever thought about the situation and the possibilities of a relationship is completely wrong. That's a lot to stomach for anyone, let alone a kid. Try not to be angry with her about this. If anything, be angry at those parents. They are the ones responsible for putting her on this mission. OP. I'm not angry with her, I don't hate her. She's obviously a scared teenager in need of guidance, and I hope she finds the answers she is looking for. Comment 2. Is her birth father in prison? Did he ever get any kind of punishment? Also, I'm so sorry for everything that has happened. Being pregnant after a forced pregnancy is so hard. I was also pregnant after I was raped, and now that I'm pregnant again I've noticed things being weird in my head. OP. He spent 16 years in prison. He raped 6 members of my family in 1 year, including myself. Being pregnant after having been pregnant from abuse is strange for sure. My pregnancy is nearly 2 decades apart, but it has brought back weird feelings. I literally chose this pregnancy. My husband and I used IVF, and sometimes I have to double think first thing in the morning of horror at the reaction of my baby bump. Comment 3. Comment removed by moderator. OP. I am now living in a hotel rather than staying in my house while I'm pregnant to avoid having to call the police on her. You're right in that, I don't know her. I don't feel overwhelming and hopefully warm love for her like a mother would, but I care about her as a person. I care for her in that I believe she deserves the very best life and answers to her questions, and emotional support. I just can't be the one to provide it. I am barely holding it together. I've done what I thought showed her respect while respecting myself. You have no right at all to ascribe intentions or feelings towards my actions. Comment 4. The adoptive parents completely disregarded their promise made when adopting her, to keep her safe. Nothing they told her kept her emotionally safe, and even put her in potential physical danger by encouraging and facilitating the hiring of a PI, which is what led to these late-night door poundings and overly emotional decision-making. I'm so angry at them for OP and for her. OP. They were unfair to her, and I'm angry with them for this reason, and not her. I'm so pissed they lied to her. I'm also a bit angry with my own parents, because at the time of the adoption I was told her parents were non-denominational Christians and not part of my parents' insane sect of Christianity. Comment 5. Wow, it just keeps getting worse. I'm really sorry. I'd be extremely angry with the adoptive parents as well. I might be more inclined to give my parents the benefit of the doubt and ask if they'd been lied to, as well, since the adoptive parents are obviously extremely dishonest, willing to tell reprehensible lies to their own child to avoid a difficult conversation. You mentioned that your parents have grown and changed immensely since this all happened. Would you be able to discuss this with them to get some answers and work towards closure, perhaps once you're back in therapy and have guidance? OP. I genuinely thought her parents were good people, all my life. Or at least all her life. It never crossed my mind, they weren't. I would have fought harder for a better set of people had I known they were the same type of Christians as my parents. I'm definitely going to be speaking with my parents about this, with the facilitation of a mental health professional, when given the chance. Honestly, my parents were such jerks and liars when I was a kid, they genuinely may not remember telling this specific lie. They are pretty awesome people now, and have spent like 15 years working so hard to change. I obviously don't excuse their behavior ever, but I do think they will be open to talk about this, and admit their part. If you're talking about speaking with her parents, I really don't think that's going to happen. Comment 6. I just asked this some seconds ago. The parents who allowed to be raped and rug-swept it, are more deserving of empathy, consideration than the poor girl, innocent in all that mess. Come on. OP, I know my parents. They raised me. They are far from perfect, I don't see them all the time, but I have an established relationship with them that spans 32 years. My biological child is a stranger to me. I don't know her intentions. I haven't spent 100s of hours in therapy with her, over nearly 2 decades, picking apart and rebuilding our relationship. She's now come to my home uninvited, 3 times, after I've asked her multiple times to leave me alone. She's stalked me at this point, and I've done nothing but try to be sympathetic to her. My parents aren't perfect people, but they've spent over a decade fundamentally reassessing who they are, what they believe and the role they played in the traumatic childhood of my brother and I. They respect every boundary I ask of them nowadays, they know the part they played and own up to how fucked if they were when I was a kid, and they are amazing parents to much younger brother than they ever were to my brother and I. My relationship with my own parents isn't up for debate here. OP, just to make it clear, my parents absolutely never allowed myself or my brother to be raped. OP, I never said they were more deserving of empathy than her. I don't think they are. Additionally, my parents again, far from perfect, but did support my brother, myself, my maternal cousins, and my paternal aunt emotionally when we testified against our rapist. Comment 7. Comment deleted by user OP, I disagree. I was a child when I had her against my will. I begged my parents and then my grandmother to please not force me to give birth. I don't know what more could be asked of me. I made it clear I did not want contact with her. She pushed for contact, and I gave it to her. I'm not going to lie to her. Her adoptive parents have already done enough of that. I hope she heals. I hope she has a great life. I just don't want any part of it. Honestly, I hope she has a great relationship with her biological grandparents, my own parents, if that's what she wants. I hope she meets them, and I hope they give her the biological connection she craves. They are entirely different people from when I was young, and I can honestly say they are good people now. I would not classify them as good parents when I was growing up, but decades and a lot of therapy can change things. I hope she finds joy, I hope she finds peace.